In the past couple of days, I'm actually reading a lot of comments and things kind of raised regarding Concord, where people mention that this is again kind of reaction to the comments made by the developers of the failed hero shooter, the game Concord, which gameplay of it you can actually see here. So some people say that they think the developers are kind of delusional, out of touch, and show no accountability for the game's failure, instead trying to blame the publisher, marketing, or even the gaming community for the failure. Now I want to tackle this from a different angle and leave politics aside. When I play the game, again I'm playing many games, it's very simple. Ask myself whether I'm actually having fun in the game. And I just want to say this straight out of the bat that I didn't buy the game. So what are actually my reasons? Well, first of all, let's say that there are parts of the game that I really enjoyed. For example, I really enjoyed playing this Carter Lark with his weapon, and actually fed with the map design. I actually enjoy zoning enemies out, and if they're rushing, this kind of, they bump into these bows that I fire and just demolish them. It felt really fun playing it. Actually, some of the weapons felt like that reminds me of MOBA games, for example, when there are some weapons and abilities where you allow you to zone out enemies. It could also just respawn back to a certain spawn point they actually put on the ground, this kind of an object. And it was really fun. You can easily flank and move around the environment. So there are some things in this game that work very well, and I actually really enjoyed it. And considering it was open beta, I mean, why not? Of course, I'm going to give it a chance. Now, Concord, of course, already came, I think, really pretty late to the market. I mean, there's a long development, 8 years from what I've heard. And the market, of course, was already saturated. I mean, by 2024, like, hero shooter had become a dirty world for many gamers, unless you were already established, like Overwatch, for example. Let's not forget that 3.5 months after, there was also another upcoming hero shooter, which is now very popular, which is Marvel Rivals, which is based, of course, on some of them very popular, of course, Marvel heroes, which already have a huge fan base, and just letting other players play their favorite hero in a hero shooter game is just a dream come true. But still, the market is very saturated, and two things went against them. First of all, it was a paid model versus many others which are actually free to play. So even at the price of $40, people will still think twice before getting into it. And many players are already invested a lot in games like Overwatch 2, Valorant, Apex Legends, and of course, if the game was received, let's say, positively, also it needs to compete against Marvel Rivals. So in a way, it's already killed itself in kind of building a player base. Now, some also will blame politics, but even if you think even if this is a game aimed towards a certain audience, considering that the open beta, from what I've read, it was around 2,300 players on Steam, concurrent players. Even if you create a niche game, for example, you aim towards a very specific audience, again with a high budget, this is going to be a huge failure. In other words, if you look at the numbers and the expected players that probably expected to play when the game is coming out, when it comes to sales, you basically please no one. No one wants to play the game. I say again, almost. The game really felt kind of, and I think others also describe it as kind of a Destiny Crucible-like meets Overwatch. Although I don't see something wrong with that, because I actually really enjoy some of the map design and some of the heroes and the way it's actually played together. But it wasn't unique enough. But aside from that, there are things that also help relate to a game. Like, for example, the background of the game, the story, the lore, the heroes. And the moment I actually started the game and I saw this cutscene with the Concord's free gunners that were kind of a band of quickie mercenaries flying around the ship called the North Star, it was very similar to Guardians of the Galaxy. So it already felt like, well, it just kind of felt like copy-paste type of world. And this is immediately kind of caused a disconnection for me, because I wanted something original. So I asked you, what is actually original for you? What actually really blew your mind away?
That was so cool! In that one battle, they had Soundquake. Remember, he has, chest missiles? So which one's your favorite? Mine's Fusionator. No. Tracer. Yeah, Tracer. She's like, cheers, love. The cavalry is here. Pew, pew, pew.
Well, when Overwatch was announced, when we saw the introduction of Overwatch, this actually blew my mind away. This is a world that I immediately want to be part of. It was like a combination for me of nostalgia, of something new and fresh, and such wonderful characters. I just want to be like that person in that world. I want to belong to that world. So Concord actually felt the opposite of that. Actually, I was thinking like, wow, this is such a lack of creativity. Why couldn't you, up with all this investment, come up with your own amazing and unique world that feels fresh, new, and something different? Yeah, but when it comes to creativity, it's never about the money, right? It's about having that person that has like vision, very creative mind that wants to create a world that many people will want to be a part of. And immediately I kind of lost it. I mean, I told myself, like, why couldn't you come up with something of your own, seriously? And by the way, it's not just that, also the tone and humor and the retro-futuristic aesthetic. So together with other aspects, it felt kind of Guardian of the Galaxy-like. And this is something like I'm saying to myself, well, let others get inspired by you. Don't get so inspired by others. If you're coming with new IP and such a big investment, I was expecting much more. So disappointment was already in, and this is something that always was, I felt it, and, but I told myself, let's give the game a chance. But I think that this is the thing, and maybe some won't give it that much, let's say, weight, but I think those type for hero shooters, and especially if you add, animated things later on, introducing heroes, you want some cohesive, something that brings everything together, and you create a world that people wants to be part of. This is because by itself, hero shooters are relatively kind of, simple and repetitive. Heroes just running around, some of little objective, but overall going and shoot each other. This is why people really love when you have, a really distinctive character design, backstory, voice acting, right? How many people go and just love hearing the voice acting of the characters, especially if they really love the world that the developers have created. I by myself, I always enjoy watching, just hearing my favorite lines from Overwatch. It just fills me with joy. Also the interaction between the characters, before the fight and during the fight. These things really put a smile on yourself and just make the experience better in general. And in that aspect, just Concord didn't feel like it at all. It didn't feel that it has its own unique identity, which for me personally, it was important. It's like too many resources go into recycling instead of innovating. I don't buy a game, especially buying a game, to just experience something that is not just the same, is actually, I consider, less compared to what the competition has to offer. But you need to understand, this is like the backbone of the game. This is why if you need to create the foundations well, otherwise if you create everything at top of it and the foundations are not good, everything will collapse. This is why you need to spend a lot of time on the really early days of the creative process of creating a game and ideas, and you really want good people to know how to do it well, and you deliver something very compelling. And I have no doubt that Blizzard had by the loads of it when they made Overwatch. I still have such huge nostalgia to Overwatch reveal moment. This is how impactful that moment was. Now also the look of the game. So I mentioned there are some things that I like about going with this direction when it comes to sci-fi and colorful, but it felt just so noisy when it comes to colors. It was so noisy because again with games like it with so many things going on and lots of information, you want something that you can differentiate between things. There's visual cues, and it's just so colorful and it's just all over the place. You can actually see here in front of you. It's just a mess to the eye. It was not that it's actually confusing that much, but it was kind of fatiguing. Now when it comes to character design also, it felt like, what it reminds me personally? Like, when I'm in character creation, I'm clicking randomize to generate a character. Some of the things just don't add up together. And again, it looks kind of, same as the environment. Kind of very noisy, lots of colors and everything, very splashy. Even look at the bar at the bottom, all gradients, everything gradients, gradients, gradients. Also lots of reds in the UI that get your attention instead of actually using something in-game. But when you have in-game, as you can see here, and lots of reds going on, and also on the minimap. Anyway, it was confusing to the eye. Now, I don't know if they built to make this game competitively at a certain point, but definitely it wouldn't work well. Even Blizzard, by the way, with Overwatch, they made so many changes to try to bring up some colors to make them, stand out and unique. Especially, by the way, when they're, in competitions, especially for viewers, by the way. Because it just could be very, very confusing when you have all these colors popping up everywhere. You can see gradients, eliminated gradient, animated gradients, all over the place. Here, the UI and the background. Let's just put as many colors as possible and just, who thought it's a good idea? Well, I don't. But who knows, maybe some thought it's actually cool and it looks colorful, splashy, and it will stand out. For me, it just didn't. Also, some UI elements kind of blend with the background, Anyway, it was bad. Even in Overwatch, by the way, if you look at the UI, you can see it. By the way, it's kind of similar to that in sped, but I think the mini map is on the other side. You're going to see that they're going to use lots of white elements, although they use here white, you can see on the right. But also when it comes to the heroes and the frame and the numbers, some of them are also white. They try to minimize the amount of colors that actually are in the UI. Now, even if you look at Overwatch maps, for example, here on the ground, it's also messy, lots of textures. Overwatch, for example, if you look at certain maps, you can see that for example, the ground is clearer, so you can easily see the pathways, and it's not like too much to your eyes. They use grays in certain areas to stabilize, so it won't overwhelm with colors. The other thing is that there are lots of also detail in the environment. If you look at Overwatch 2, for example, you can see that it kind of looks more low poly. And also less detail compared to what you see here. This is also can be fatiguing and also distract because lots of information is there. So if you look at Overwatch 2, for example, gameplay, just search online, you compare it to this, you can see a huge difference. So at the end of the day, for me, the game didn't stand out from the rest. It was a paid game after all. I didn't really enjoy being part of this world they created. They didn't really bring anything super specially unique that really make the game stand out from the rest. I also think there are some bad design choices, some of them I mentioned here. I didn't relate to most of the characters. And therefore, with probably some other things, although I really like, by the way, the sound effects, I just lost interest. So yeah, I'm among those who actually appreciate some of the things that were done in this game. But overall, as a whole, this was a no-buy for me. So yeah, everybody gonna have their own stories about why they didn't get Concord one way or another. This is just my little story. Thanks for watching.